like it was much easier to talk to them once we all took the IPS training. Once I got the staff on board, I did have them take the IPS training. Sometimes it's a little difficult because you hire staff and the IPS training isn't available for 3, 4, 5 months. So like currently my 2 staff, they're not even taking the IPS training till September, I believe it is. So but they're getting a good outlook of what it is. I would suggest that you download the IPS manual and you keep that on hand so that you guys can talk about it. We also went to our board and we talked to the board about what our program was and what we thought we were going to be able to accomplish. The other thing that we do with staff is we continue to push the zero exclusion. This has been difficult for both mental health staff and SUD, this way of thinking. Clinicians tend to want to throw up barriers without even realizing that they are, by saying, well, they can't do this right now because they're not stabilized in their mental health, or they're not stabilized in their SUD, or they have too many court requirements, or whatever may come up. They may feel like this is something that's hard for them, but we had to really explain to them and have a lot of these water cooler talks with them outside of the team meetings. Team meetings are really good to go talk to them about the program and talk to them about the clients that are referred, but it's something that I encourage my supported employment team to talk about all the time. Even if, like in this picture, if they're standing around the water cooler or whatever, just talk about the things that they're doing with the clients.
Hi, Mindy. This is Dawn Miller. I just wanted to let you know that I was able to sign on, and I apologize for being on late. I've had technical difficulties, and I just wanted to briefly thank everybody for attending the webinar today, to let you know that the recording and other materials will be sent out after the fact. And I just wanted to add to what Mindy was saying in relationship to getting IPS training. It's probably easier now than it ever has been because we have the 2 supported employment IPS trainers that can do training on demand with agencies and do new staff training pretty readily if you reach out to one of us. So just wanted to add that piece.
Thank you, Dawn. So my content is about how we added it into the SUD program and the successes and challenges that we've had. So questions we started asking ourselves was, why the SUD clients? So the cons were, these were pretty typical mindsets that we had, and even I did. When I was approached to be the director of this program, I was excited, but I was also kind of stuck in my thinking of, this is great, but I know exactly when I would refer them. So a lot of it was they cannot work during the IOP phase of treatment. It's something that we used to always say, because they don't have enough recovery time under their belt, and it would, they're still using, so they would never pass the drug tests. It adds undue anxiety to an already full treatment schedule, because a lot of times our SUD clients, they're involved with us, they're involved with the courts, they may be involved with DCFS and maybe doing some parenting classes, or we had clients who are on the TANF program and they have to do so many hours job searching. But I went down and talked to DSHS, and I'll get into that a little bit more too. The clinicians, they felt like they were vouching for the client and that it was putting their professional reputation on the line, because they felt like they didn't understand. They felt like, okay, I'm making this referral to employment, and so if the client goes out, gets a job, and they mess up because they've been using or whatever, that employer would look at Cascade and say, well, why are you sending us these kinds of clients? So that was a really big thing that we had to talk about. And again, that there was a perception that they're just going to relapse and lose their job anyway. So the pros were, having employment only enhances their recovery because it gives people a purpose. It gives them a reason to change. As we all know, you have to have a reason to make a change in your life. Whatever that reason is why you're going to make a change. If you don't have a reason, why would you make a change? So working towards employment was giving them those added incentives, if you will, to make those changes. It also, we found that it was starting to help them pay down their legal fees, which actually decreased their anxiety around legals, because now they had some money to make those payments and they weren't being sent to collections, and then it wasn't affecting their driver's license and those kind of things. And then ultimately we were like, well, why not? Why not at least try it? See where it goes from here. So this is what we've had. We only did our statistics through the end of 2019. I'll talk a little bit about what's happening with the COVID too, but I didn't want to pull those statistics because that doesn't give you a true picture of how we've been really running the program. We've adapted during this crisis. So we've had 384 referrals since March of 2018. 49% of those were SUD. And so when you think about the population of our mental health side versus my SUD side, on the mental health side at any given time, they have 1,500 active clients, and I have anywhere between 150, 175 active clients. So I feel like we have a very high referral rate from the SUD side compared to the mental health side. 217 of those referrals actually engaged, which means that they did come in and receive their assessment. We had at least that appointment with them, and 38% of those were actually SUD. Again, if you compare the population rates between mental health and SUD, SUD's kind of kicking it. They're doing really good with it. 64 of those achieved employment, and not just they were employed for a week or two, but they were actually employed for them what felt like a long-term 2, 3, 4 months at a time, and 85% of that was SUD. So when you go back to thinking about our pros and cons, our cons really didn't hold water at all with what we were seeing. Now, with COVID, we've had to make some adjustments. We haven't been able to do as much job development as we could. We've really kind of been focusing on keeping all the clients engaged. And by doing that was just always reaching out to them, reassuring them that we are going to be able to go out looking for jobs, doing those kind of things. We did some job research with them, really sat down and been working with them about, I know you keep telling us that you want a job, but here's a perfect opportunity to really look at what is your ultimate career goal? What can we do to help you achieve that? Because that's really what supported employment is about. And I think sometimes we get busy wanting to just help the client get a job because they're so stressed that they have no money, that they don't even understand that while we can help them get a job, we can continue to help them achieve their career goal, even though they're working in a job that they felt they needed to just get out and get. So in some ways, it's been nice. It's slowed us down. We've been able to really work with the clients in that aspect. We have had some clients who continued to use, and they did lose their jobs because of their use. I don't want to pull any punches on that. That has happened. I will say that me as a director of the program, there are times that I find myself falling back into old thinking, and I have to keep telling myself so I can lead my team that no, we need to just continue to use this time to work with it. And the other thing that I would suggest that you do with your team for supported employment, hopefully Don won't get mad at me for saying this, but I really encourage you to get all your team members trained in motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing only enhances what the IPS training gives you. And it really gets that engagement going with the clients. And to be honest, as a clinician, motivational interviewing actually makes our job easier because it opens the door for the clients to talk with us more and more. So at that point, I want to just check real quick. Does anybody have any questions?
And Mindy, I'll take a minute to say I absolutely agree with you related to motivational interviewing. It goes just hand in glove with doing IPS. It really does. Help people to identify their own goals. I will also say that related to job development, things have really changed, obviously, because of COVID-19. I know there are agencies out there that are placing just as many people as they were before and in just as timely a manner. In fact, I just did a Fidelity review of one agency that has actually doubled their placement rate.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's possible to do. We do the Job Developers Community of Practice call once a month, and we've started the last 3 of them really talking about what are we doing differently at this point in time in order to still achieve the goal of helping people get meaningful jobs. And so if anybody has questions about that and it ends up being a challenge, reach out to me and I'll make sure that you get the flyers for the Job Developers Community of Practice. But there's no doubt it's just incredibly different than it was. And hopefully we'll take some of the wonderful lessons learned, because there's been some good ones, so that when things open up again, statewide, nationwide, that we're still doing some of the good things that we had to start doing during COVID-19. It'll be different. We'll talk about that, but yeah, there's some good things that have actually happened.
I agree. I do see, on the SUD side, we continue to make referral. Here's the other thing. I'm also an anger management specialist, so every single one of my anger management people, I've also referred into that because they all have previous diagnosis. So they do actually meet criteria for it. Oh, that is one thing I wanted to talk about, was criteria on the SUD side. So sometimes marking those boxes for the criteria for the SUD, people get themselves tied up, wrapped up into that question that says, have they had 2 or more in the last year? That's just one part of the criteria. The other part of the criteria is I don't have it in front of me, but it's the diminishing capacity. So you can also look at, if they are newly in recovery, we all know that that's really not a stable place for them newly in recovery. While we can commend them and think that that's wonderful that they're there, they still have a lot of challenges. Dimension 3 with their emotional and behavioral, because a lot of times they're continuing to do addictive behaviors, and emotionally, now they're having to live a lifestyle of sobriety, and to some people that's scary because they haven't done that for many, many years. So they do meet criteria through that because they are in danger. If we don't get them positive things, outlets like a job, or getting to their sober support meetings, or whatever it may be, they're in danger of relapsing, and they're in danger of falling back into it. So they do meet criteria when you look at that second part. So don't get just stuck on that first part where it just asks that one simple little question, because if you get stuck there, you're not going to make very many SUD referrals. Okay, so I'm not seeing too many questions yet.
I will say that, folks, if you want to, you can either raise your hand or you can type in the chat box, either one. I'll keep a watch on both to help Mindy out. So it's easy to be able to ask questions, either type them in the chat box or raise your hand and we'll unmute you so you can actually speak.
Thank you, Dawn. And we also find we, on the SUD side, we re-refer. So we do have clients who come in at the assessment time and say, oh yeah, I want a job, because you know, you talk about that in Dimension 6, we talk about the recovery environment, and employment is part of that. They say, yes, I want a job, so we make the referral over. They just don't really engage, probably because they're overwhelmed. I mean, we can make all kinds of assumptions of why they don't really engage, but we don't really know. But as they move through treatment and they start having some confidence in that they can make some changes, they'll ask again to be re-referred over. So we just keep referring them. We never feel, and that's that zero exclusion. We don't feel like, well, I've already made a referral for you twice and you haven't engaged. Our SUD clinicians and our mental health clinicians, they don't necessarily have that conversation. They just, if a client asks to be referred over, they're like, great, let's get you over. And that's really for our supported employment people to work on engaging them in it. Because I think sometimes as SUD clinicians and mental health clinicians, unbeknownst to us, we could probably talk a client out of doing it. Obviously, that's not something that they want to do, but even myself, I can find myself thinking, when they're talking to me, I will start thinking, and like I said, I have to pull myself out of my old thinking and remember, zero exclusion. They asked, let's just send them over. Let's let the supported employment work their magic and meet with them. So, and I have to say, I'm pretty proud of my team. They do pretty good with that. One of our success stories is somebody who, she actually was not only in our SUD program, she was also on Suboxone and had a baby, and we referred her to supported employment, and she was able to achieve employment. And as far as we know, she's still in that employment, doing really well. You know, she's completed treatment. She actually came off of Suboxone. She didn't want to stay on it anymore after her pregnancy. So she's been able to make a lot of great changes and positive changes for her in this. And we actually are at the Q&A. I know that I kind of ran through it really quick, but I really like to hear from you guys. What kind of questions, what are some of the things that you guys are doing and that works for you? Do we have people on here that are SUD departments that are really looking at getting this started? Because I would really encourage you to do it. It's a little difficult at first, like I said, changing the mindset. But once you get that mindset changed, it works. The SUD department here, it's completely part of the assessment. When they get done with the client, they ask them, do you want to get a job? Do you want to do something like that? So we make sure that we really know that they offer it. Oh, the other thing that I did is I went to our district court here, and I had a long conversation with them about, hey, when clients come to our treatment, here's what we're also offering them. The courts loved it. They loved the fact that we were helping people get employment. And it wasn't even about that they were thinking, oh, great, now they can finally make their payments. It was, they really felt like this was a good opportunity for them and to help them really make changes for themselves.
So Mindy, I see, and I don't think I can read the whole question. I love technology, but it just does not always work. It says supported employment question mark, and I can't see the remainder of it. I hate to say. So if anybody wants to actually raise their hand and elaborate on the remainder of the question. Let's see here. Looks like we've got at least one raised hand. Hallie, and I'm going to try and unmute you, Hallie. It also says you're self-muted, so you'll need to unmute from that end too. There you go. Looks like you probably can speak now.
Hi. Yes, my question is, so we have started the SCS program here, but we're still in the building stages, and we work with the homeless in a SUD in a zero barrier clinic, and wondering if you've had any experience working with folks that are homeless in supported employment.
Yes. Most of our people are homeless, or they're transient, or they're couch surfing, or things like that. So we just continue to work with them. We also work with one of our other local agencies that helps with this. We don't do the supported housing because we have 2 agencies locally that are very good with that. Like, they know what they're doing. So it made sense to partner with them. And we've had good success. Because remember, with supported employment, the beauty of supported employment is you get to be so creative on how to help people get to jobs. We've helped people with bus tickets. We have helped people who had vehicles to maybe look at ways that we can get their vehicle fixed, or those kind of things. We recently just applied for a United Way grant, and as of July 1, I will be getting $4,500 for the next year. And with that money, it's low barrier money, so I get to do anything with that money to help people get a job. So if it's getting their driver's license back, if it's fixing their car, if it's buying a interview outfit or work clothes or haircuts, or maybe they do find a place to live in, but they're $200 short on the down payment, we can do all of that. That's going to help them. But I would continue to work with the homeless people. I know IPS says you have to do the rapid job placement, but as long as you document really well, rapid job placement to me doesn't always mean that they're actually have applied for a job. Rapid job placement means that you're hurrying up to help them apply for a job. So whatever you can do to get them to that place so that they can apply for a job. Not that we are doing all these mock interviews, not that we're sending them out to do volunteer work to get skills, all that stuff. Yeah, they can go do that, that's great, but rapid job placement is we are helping them with their resumes, feeling confident, going to the interview with them, helping them set up the interviews, those kind of things. And sometimes, you know, it takes a little while, but document everything that you're doing to get them into those jobs. I hope that helped.
And I see then that Harold also has a question, and now I am able to see the whole question. We are a recovery cafe and will be receiving funding to start a supported employment program. What advice do you have for us as we start to build and implement the program?
So for me, I was very lucky that I hired somebody who had some experience in standing up programs, because there's a lot of documentation to go through and figure out. There's a lot of data that you need to collect. I would definitely look at putting the right person in that place to help you walk through everything that you need to do in building the documentation. The next step is really talking with staff. We're changing our social support center over to a clubhouse, so we're working on that too, because what we found was even peers, it was interesting because even peers had the mindset of, oh no, you can't get a job yet, you need to complete this, you need to complete that. So really working with staff on that zero exclusion, and it is not for us to put up any kind of barriers. If they say they want a job, then let's work with them to get a job. Those are my two things, is really working on staff's impression and thought processes, and having a really good person by your side that can help you go through the process of standing up the program.
Absolutely. It cannot be stressed how important the supervisor and leadership are in regards to actually starting an IPS program. I will say, Harold, if you're one of the agencies that's gotten the grant to hire a supported employment staff, we have the DBHR trainers have a series of trainings scheduled in order to teach you about IPS, in order to discuss, some of the considerations in regards to hiring and starting the program and documentation and that kind of thing. And I would mention again that as trainers, we've worked in agencies where they've started IPS programs, so have practical experience related to that. I see there's a question from Kristen. It says, any advice for starting conversations between SUD and supported employment branches in an organization to encourage more referrals?
Yes, so I talked about motivational interviewing. We tend to always think that we need to use motivational interviewing on our clients. We also need to use motivational interviewing on our peers. So I approached it from that aspect, is I really wanted to give them the opportunity to express their concerns. And from that gave me the jumping off point. I did have an advantage because I'm the director of the supported employment. And look, to be completely honest, I'm just going to throw this out there. If it came down to it, I would have just mandated it, but I didn't have to do that. But I really think just letting them talk about their fears and their concerns, because everybody has so much compassion for their clients and they really want to make sure that their clients succeed. They fear setting them up in a situation that they're going to fail, and just reassuring them there's no failure to this. Here's the deal. Even if they go through the process of supported employment and they don't actually get a job, think about those skills that those clients have gotten. One, they've gotten the ability to go and advocate for themselves with the supported employment people, because they're telling us what their skills are. They're talking about themselves in a positive way. They are gaining some skills from the supported employment people. There was people that we've had that really didn't even know how to research online different job opportunities. And what I mean by that is, like, they had no idea what kind of jobs they wanted to do. So we were able to teach them how to go out and research online and find out about different jobs. So think about how this is really helping people have more confidence in those kind of things. And that's where I was working with the SUD staff to help them understand this is a good thing. Doesn't mean that they're always going to get a job. But any contact that they have with somebody who's going to increase their self-esteem, increase their confidence, increase their purpose in life, that's never a bad thing.
Very, very well said. I see Harold had said, thanks, I'll be doing those trainings. Stacy says, I have questions about starting up the program. Did you say trainings are coming up in a sequence series? There's been a grant opportunity, and in fact, I think we've maximized the number of agencies that will be getting kind of seed money to hire a supported employment staff. And what we're also providing is a series of trainings to those staff. I want to stress that even if an agency is not part of that particular grant, there's still training available to you in order to do startup, in order to learn IPS and that kind of thing. I will also mention that We have a wiki, so essentially an online library, and trainings that we've done in the past. The PowerPoints and the recordings are typically on there, and a lot of really good information. And there's also Pathways to Employment. That is a resource for individuals, but it's also a resource for staff, where you can access the Pathways to Employment website and be able to help a person access benefits planning. Or there is a tab that relates to substance use disorder and some of the things to consider when you're helping a person to get a job. So there's lots of resources out there. When I send you the thank you for attending email, I will include those links so that you can access those things as well. Kristen said, thank you. Stacy said, the agency I'm interning with did get a STEAG grant. Yay!
The other thing that I really want to give a shout out to you guys is I have been very lucky, and I believe that all of you will be very lucky. I've had Lisa Bennett Perry and Dawn Miller by my side through this whole process, and I ask them questions all the time. No matter how silly I feel it is or whatever, I shoot questions up to them and we will hash things out. And they've never, ever made me feel like, well, this was kind of a dumb question. DBHR is very supportive through this process as you started up. And when you do your peer reviews, the peer reviews are amazing because you get to get so much information from that peer review about your program, but you also get to get some information about the close your ears, Dawn. So the peer reviewers that come are not supposed to really give you information about their program, but look, we're all human. And we do kind of not that we're throwing out opinions or anything. I know when I did my peer reviews, the agency was doing some stuff. I'm like, oh my God, that's really cool. How are you doing that? Because this is what I run up against. So, I love this whole peer review idea because it gives you opportunity to talk with each other face to face and see what things they're doing. And I'm a very rural community, so I happen to do a peer review up in Puyallup, which actually has way more resources than I do, but I was able to bring some stuff back and add into my program, just things that they were doing. So please use DBHR, their whole supported employment team. I'm a little partial to Dawn and Lisa because that's who I've been working with the whole time. But everybody else has been great too.
Yeah, I will say, Lance said Lisa is a great resource. She absolutely is. I think one of the things that I value in our team is that we each have kind of a little different background. I worked in a behavioral health agency, so mental health and SUD. Lisa has worked in the past with a lot of folks returning to the community from incarceration and has some amazing skills related to that. Darren, our newest member of the SE team, has got experience with behavioral health as well. And in a metropolitan area, mine, much like you, Mindy, I'm from Grant County and Moses Lake. If you've heard the terminology when they talk about rural mental health, we are considered frontier. So yes. Even a step below rural. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I get you. And then Darren has the experience of working in a much larger area. So I think we've each kind of got some differences in what we've done to be able to answer questions in a pretty broad scope. So absolutely reach out to us for help whenever you might need to. Looks like Ashley has a hand raised, and I am going to unmute you, Ashley.
And I want to quickly apologize. The landscapers are here and they're mowing right outside my window. So you're probably hearing me. I'm sorry.
Real life in COVID, huh? Looks like maybe Ashley took her hand back down again. So
no, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Well, a quick question. I'm trying to wrap my head. I'm very familiar with supported employment in many areas and across the country. And I'm listening to this. We are an opioid treatment program. We are a recipient and to be receiving some of the seed money. My intent and was to build off of some of our existing capacity, in particular our certified peer counselors and the work that they're engaged in. And then I hear you talking about, seed monies to hire supported employment staff, and the trainings are available, obviously, through DBHR. I get that. I'm just trying to understand maybe the use of language or really what is the intent, because I'm like, well, okay, if I'm going to hire supported employment staff, from my experience, there's already plenty of agencies and organizations that are supported employment entities, organizations, businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Are you asking us to essentially, like, I guess I'm just trying to understand how this money really is to be used, because I mean, yes, it is seed money, but it's not enough to actually hire someone. It's just to get things launched. So can you explain more about from an opioid treatment program?
I can, and I'll do that briefly because I know not all of this. And I need to apologize to you, Ashley. My assumption when I pulled up your name was female, and I apologize.
No worries. No worries.
So the seed grant really is intended to hire supported employment staff. One of the other parts of the grant is then the agency is expected to become a foundational community supports agency, so that the person that's doing supported employment will start billing Medicaid, bringing in that income in order to pay their salary. So the $20,000 is not going to cover everything, and it's not intended to. It's an aid to start things. But that person is truly intended to be a supported employment staff that's going to provide supported employment services. And we'll talk more about that in the series of trainings. Pardon me. Goodness. Excuse me. And so I hope that at least briefly answers your questions. We're going to start on the trainings in the pretty near future with a training with leadership to start out, and then are going to do trainings also with supervisors, direct service staff. Going to touch on some job development, going to touch on a lot of different things. And then that'll be Lisa and Darren and I. And then as you move into becoming a foundational community supports agency, then Darren and I would be available to agencies in order to do ongoing training when you have a question. You mentioned peer support, and the agency that I worked for had 3 supported employment staff, one of whom was a peer. I know a lot of agencies have opted to have that peer position be kind of a support position. We opted to have the peer be an actual employment specialist. So they did the same work as everybody else, but when it became apparent that a person was really struggling with hope and motivation and just keeping going, then there were times that we would refer them to the peer and had her do the wonderful things that she did related to sharing what employment meant to her, and the fact that she had justice involvement in her past and was able to get the job, and kind of how she dealt with self-care and coping with mental health symptoms and that kind of thing. And it was a marvelous match. Worked out very well, but not all agencies choose to do it that way.
No, understood. And this is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's a good point, because my 3 staff, I make sure that my 3 staff work with all clients. Well, we do assign one of the employment specialists. I make sure that the clients know that they can work with any of the staff, because we have found sometimes that we've assigned a client to one of the staff members and they just weren't engaging, so we've asked a different staff member to talk with them, and then they just blossom. So don't get stuck into a place where they just have to work with that assigned person. It really is a team, and they all need to work with all the clients.
Understood, and thank you, Mindy. I appreciate it. But this is Ashley. So I have a real brief follow-up then. And maybe this is part of the training. It comes down to licensure or certifications, and then is there something specific to the foundational community supports providers? Is there an additional credentialing they have to go through? Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. For the clinic.
AmeriGroup, when you
Yes,
become
I
a
saw
foundational
that.
community supports provider, has requirements on their website. I believe it's in their provider manual that indicate the credentials that a supported employment specialist has to have. So that would be your resource to check and see what their credentialing requirements are.
And
Okay, I'll review.
I have one that has a master's, and I have one that has an AA, and I have one that has a high school diploma, but all of them have their AACs. So, and we made that decision as an agency that all of them would have an AAC.
Yeah, the agency that I worked for opted to have everyone have an agency affiliated counselor registration as well.
The other thing is another website is I would go to IPS Works. That's where I send my guys for their training online, which I need to talk to you more, Dawn, about the trainers that you guys have to come in, because I didn't know that you had that now. But the IPS Works has a lot of information on it, and it also has information for the international community for IPS. So it's got some good stuff on there.
Truly does. I'm so glad you brought that up. I can include that link in the thank you for attending email that I'm going to send out. Lots of good resources available. One of the things that we're going to discuss, but just in general for folks, if you're hiring new staff, using the Fidelity scale as part of your training tool is a really good thing to do. It's a well established, and it's an evidence-based practice, so it would have to be well established with 27 randomized controlled trials at this point in time that prove that the principles work. Back when the state of Washington was considering becoming an IPS state, so in other words, making IPS kind of the gold standard for what we're going to do for supported employment, we had an employment rate, not unemployment, but employment rate for people with serious mental illness of it was between 14 and 21%. Now I can't recall what it was just exactly. With IPS, the employment rate ends up being closer to 50 to 60% if you perform at high fidelity. That's huge. I mean, 20% unemployment rate, 80% unemployment rate. Who's going to put up with that, for heaven's sakes? That's absolutely crazy. So if followed to high fidelity, the system really truly does work. I worked in an agency for 21 years doing supported employment, and only the last few of them doing IPS. There was a huge difference, huge improvement. I see that Harold has another question. Says we have a close relationship with a chain of 5 restaurants, and they are interested in working with us to be a resource for staff. Will we be learning about how to incorporate them into our program?
Well, you incorporate them into the program just by the sheer fact that they want to partner with you. We take clients we had a client who wanted to work as a barista. So we met with them at Starbucks and sat and let them watch the environment to see if that's something that they wanted to do. So that chain of restaurants, have the client go to the restaurant with you. You don't have to be buying them lunch. You don't have to do any of that. Just go and sit and have them watch the environment and see if that's something that they want to do. But you already are a step ahead just from the sheer fact that the restaurants want to partner with you.
Absolutely, that's a step ahead. The other thing is not everybody's going to want to work in a restaurant, and IPS is truly related to choice. What does the person want to do? So that's something to keep in mind too. Harold says, but we need to be sure they understand the supports clients may need. I want to talk a little bit about disclosure. Not everybody that we work with will allow you to talk to the employer on their behalf.
Right.
If you do, then you have a conversation with them about what specifically can I share with the employer. I've always found in the work that I did that if you just ask a person, can I talk to an employer on your behalf, they're going to say no. I would too. If you say, I want to tell them that you have schizophrenia, they're going to say no. I would too. If you say, I would like to talk to the employer about the fact that you have some problems with organizing, and we found that a checklist really helps with that, I would probably say yes. And I think so would a lot of the people on our caseload. But there were folks that I worked with that were very, we talk about invisible disabilities, and some of them are not. A disability that was not invisible, and would say, I don't want my employer to know. That's their choice to make. Absolutely their choice to make. I think we find as we work with people over time, and if they have success, great. If they end up leaving jobs for one reason or another, we talk about lessons learned, and one of those might be, I can give more support to you if I can talk to the employer on your behalf. And so it's a dance. It's based on choice. We have to respect people's choice and work with them, where they're coming from. And sometimes it works out perfectly and sometimes it doesn't. So from those lessons learned, we perhaps offer another, idea about disclosing and that kind of thing. So that's one of the things that you'll be running into as well, is disclosure and whether the person wants you to talk to the employer on their behalf. Do you have anything to add, maybe? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. And sometimes they'll tell you no about disclosure in the beginning, but as you move through the process, they may say yes. And we also make sure that they are okay with us talking to, not even just disclosing their diagnosis or anything, but we really make sure that they're the ones asking us to go talk. Like if they come in because they're having issues at work and they don't know how to approach the employer about it or that kind of stuff, we make sure that they are truly asking us to go with them to talk to the employer.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they just want to come in and ask us on how to deal with it or what they should do with it. It was tricky because Cascade, we made a commitment that we would be an employer for our clients. And so it was, first I want to say Cascade was very receptive to it. I think it was myself as a director and the team that it felt kind of weird when a client was having some issues at work to go to our own employer and say, there's some issues here. It worked out fine, but we definitely waited for the client to say, I don't know what else to do. Can you step in for me? And so we did that. But yeah, that's definitely, it's not just about disclosure. And I would always be talking to them about it. I wouldn't just leave it at the very beginning when they said, no, I don't want you to ever disclose anything. Always just be finding out, are we still on this case of you don't want us to disclose, or where do you need us to be for you right now? Where do you need me to walk beside you to be successful?
Absolutely. So I see Laura has a question. Laura said, what does the certification AAC stand for? Where can people go to be trained for the employment certification?
Oh, the AAC is the agency affiliated counselor, and you have to be employed with a behavioral health agency, and they can apply for that online. But the qualifications is you have to have your high school diploma or GED, and you have to be working for a behavioral health agency in order for that to be valid. The training for the supported employment, like Dawn said, they have some, which she'll send out information on that. But you can also go to IPS Works. Is it 8 weeks or 10 weeks? I can't remember. But anyways, it's a webinar and it's really self-directed. So you can do one of the sessions every week. You can do 2 sessions a week, whatever works for the staff to do. I like to have 2 staff doing it at one time so that they can talk with each other with what they're learning. I happened to go through the supervisor training before we even stood up the program, so I was answering the questions based on what I thought I was gonna do. But I didn't have anybody to really talk to back then. It was just getting started in the state, so I didn't really have my resources So, but I would suggest that if you can, I know not everybody's going to have multiple staff, but if you can, I would have 2 staff doing the training at the same time at a minimum, so that they can bounce the training off of each other. So what did you learn, or what did you get out of this? I think is very helpful.
Mm-hmm. And you touched on a good point. One of the Fidelity principles says for highest fidelity, a supported employment unit has at least 2 employment services staff. And when you think about it, there's a lot of need for backing each other up. If a person's going to a job interview and you're job coaching somebody else, what do you do if you have 2 people on your caseload with needs at exactly the same time? Well, hopefully you've got somebody to back you up and assist with the support that the other person might need. So it feels more supportive and is more supportive if there's more than 1 staff doing the work. Mm-hmm. A lot of agencies start out with 1. There is nothing wrong with that. You got to do what your agency can support. But I think there are a lot of agencies that then add a second staff later on when they are able, when they've got enough, when they're generating enough income.
So I also want to share with you guys, this was before I met Dawn, but Lisa was a huge help on one of our clients. We had a gentleman who was living in an adult family home, and he had told his mental health worker that he wanted to get employment. So of course we come in, we help. He had some dementia going on. I'm going to contradict myself right now because I'm going to say his career goals were a little unrealistic. He wanted to be an astronaut at one point. But we continued to work through it. Whitney, who was my first hire, she got this one. So she had to keep working through it. And she would go to the adult family home to work with him. I think we had him on the books for almost a year that we kept working with him. We did get him to a couple interviews. But here's what we kept looking at with that. This was a gentleman who wasn't showering regularly, changing clothes regularly, not really. So Whitney was able to get him, he put on clean sweats, he went to those interviews, we saw that his hygiene was starting to get a little bit better. Unfortunately, after a year, we did not ask for reauthorization because some of our concerns were, we were working with mental health, expanded community supports, medical, all kinds of stuff. And some of our concerns were if he got out on the bus to go to a job with his dementia, would he get lost? I mean, there started to become some physical concerns that we had. But in that time, there was little things that we saw that we were like, this is great. But I'm not going to lie, it was frustrating because we thought that we were in over our heads. But this is where I'm saying DBHR is there to help you. DBHR is there to help walk you through all of this. And going to the team meetings is also very important because Whitney was talking with ECS. She was talking with the mental health counselor. She was talking with the adult family home. So while our job is employment, our job is also to be gathering data and checking in with their providers to make sure that what we're doing isn't going to cause damage or harm. And that's really kind of what started happening with this client.
It doesn't always work, does it? But you mentioned the astronaut. One of the gentlemen that I supervised had a guy on his caseload that wanted to be Batman.
Yeah.
And those of you that have heard me speak have heard this story before too. And the gentleman, the staff person, came to me and said, "What do I do?" I said, "We'll help him be Batman." And he said, "I hate you, and you're going to come in my session with me, and let's figure this out." So what we did do was to talk to the gentleman and say, "What about Batman sounds so cool to you? What about that sounds like an attractive job?" In his case, it was the cool car. Well, then we've got something we can work with. Batman, obviously, when we talk about unrealistic goals, I had a gal who had been a prostitute and a drug dealer and decided she wanted to be a welder. I thought it was unrealistic. Do you know what? With assistance, with our assistance, she made it through college. She got her certification. She got a job as at a scrapyard using a cutting torch and cutting apart metals in the scrapyard. She dealt great with the guys there. She, they would give her a ration of stuff and she gave it right back because she wasn't afraid of them. And I mean, it was just a match made in heaven. But anywhere along the way, I could have said, I'm not so sure about that. And I would have been deadly wrong. I see a couple of questions. I see, and I'm not sure if I'm saying the name right, Rodnisha. And I hope I'm still on because it says they've lost my audio. Mindy, can you hear me? Okay, it looks like you're talking and I can't tell if wave if you can hear me.
You can.
I lost audio. I'm back on again, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say Rodnisha has a hand raised. I apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly. Would you like me to unmute, Mindy? Okay. So you're unmuted, Rodnisha.
I'm so sorry. I did not mean to raise my hand.
Oh, no worries. That happens. Nice talking with you.
You as well.
So anyway, with this young gal, we did gather all the information that we could.
I got an email. I don't know if it was a typo, but they were faxing a.
Somebody needs to mute their screen. Okay. So we went and we gathered the information, got everything, because as you can imagine, reaching over, you could grab the steamer thing without knowing it. Like Starbucks explained to us, not everything that you need is always in the same area. They weren't even opposed to having the conversation with us. They actually did have the conversation with us to sit down and go, how could we support this? So it became a safety issue. And so we've had that conversation with that client, and now she's open to looking at other things. But when you're working with the younger generation, like she came in and that was her goal because all of her friends are working at Dutch Brothers, at Starbucks, at all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of times people come in with what they think that their goal is until we have those conversations. So don't ever be afraid to have the conversation. I know I say that our goal is to get them to their ultimate career thing, but sometimes we don't know. I didn't even know that I was going to work in the SUD field till I was in my 30s.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I didn't know. I just wanted a Monday through Friday. In my early 20s, I had a child. I wanted to work a Monday through Friday job so I could be there I didn't know what kind of career I was going to do.
Absolutely. And I think, if we talk to the group as a whole, I'm betting that there may not be anybody that was in the first job that they ever took. And that's the way it works. And so that's, IPS is really based on kind of reality and relationships and things that make a whole lot of common sense. I do see that Dawn says she's in Yakima County. I'm an HHCC care manager in CDP. I was wondering where I can send my members for IPS here in the Yakima area. And that's a really good question. AmeriGroup on their website has a find a doctor, but I can attach, there's a map of foundational community supports providers per areas, and you can search, you can narrow it down a lot related to foundational community supports providers, maybe even where the person is living, so closer to their own address. And I will send out that map or the link to the map when I send out the email afterwards.
And I think Yakima County, though, all that, I can't remember the name of it, but they have multiple clinics. It's the community
Yakima Neighborhood Health or Comprehensive are two of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with them before too, and so they have that.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing too. We've worked with clients, you know, we kind of get stuck in our own little bubble where we work. I work in Lewis County, but we have clients that have said, I'll go to Olympia to work, or I'll go to Longview to work. So don't be afraid to allow your specialists to go do job development up there or down there. If you have a client that has the means and wants to do that, spread out, because as we talked earlier, I'm in a rural community, and we don't want to. One of the things on the Fidelity is they want to see a variety of different job developments and different jobs that people are applying for. Unfortunately, I don't have a huge variety where I'm at. I do the best that we can, but we don't have a huge variety. So being able to reach out to Thurston County or Cowlitz County for clients to go helps us with the Fidelity part of it, but it, you know, in the end, it helps the clients. So don't be afraid to reach out to areas outside of your bubble to help the clients. Absolutely. And for SUD, one of the things for SUD that's come up multiple times is, okay, I'm going to try to do this without showing my real emotions on my face to you guys. We have clients who want to work in the marijuana field. So because it's federal dollars, I have struggled with that. I know that I've reached out to Lisa and Dawn in the past about this, and we've struggled about that. How do we help them move into this field? Because it is a competitive job, and they kind of have some experience and know what to do with this stuff. They know about it. So we document it as agricultural work. We don't necessarily help them get that. We help them research it, and we kind of leave them on their own to go to the job interviews, those kind of things, which has worked out well. That's been one of the biggest pushes on our thought processes, because anybody else who's an SUD counselor out there will know that, you know, one of the things that we caution them about is don't work in bars, don't, you know, work in places that can maybe trigger you. But we had to really kind of just put that thought process down. And but it's been interesting because we have seen it come up quite a few times in our.
It just feels wrong, doesn't it? And yet it's about choice.
It really is, and it's competitive work.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, and that's kind of where you have to have we work hand in hand. The supported employment works hand in hand with my SUD department, and they work hand in hand with the mental health departments. That's where SUD has to surrender. We have to allow supported employment to do their job. We can't go, if they're sitting in our team meeting and they're saying that they're doing this and this and this with the client, we can't then jump in and go, oh God, you know, they just gave me a positive UA yesterday and I think you're adding too much stress. No, we as SUD providers have to support them in the natural stress that happens when we move through life. Supported employment is going to help them gain their employment. So we can't stop the process. Being an SUD provider, we cannot stop the process of anxieties and other things coming up as they move through life, because we want to protect them.
You know, Mindy, there's and very well said, I thought. Because I've done supported employment for a lot of years, we used to do what was called train place, which means we would work with a person and teach them all the skills we thought that they needed to have in order to get a job before we even started to look for a job. So by that point in time, they were typically so irritated because they said they wanted a job, and instead what we were doing was training the heck out of them, that we lost a lot of folks. over and above that, it wasn't really realistic. Maybe we taught the right skills, maybe we didn't. Now we do, it's more place trained. We put a person in a job and then we help them to learn the skills they need for that job, including coping, including just the variety of things that go on. My current job is far different than my last job, and my coping skills when things get overwhelming. And I know one of my colleagues is on the call. We just had this talk yesterday about COVID-19 and isolation and extra work, and how could I have prepared for that? I couldn't. So I need to be able to cope and have the skills needed to work in this job specifically. And it's the same thing with the folks that we work with. So the other thing is I have an anxiety disorder, and a lot of people know that. Used to be that speaking in front of groups was incredibly hard to do, and I still get butterflies, but it's not nearly as hard because of exposure. And so the people that we work with that have different challenges, maybe they'll succeed, maybe they won't. Maybe we need to continue working with them to find that great match, but we don't know unless they try. If you'd asked me on day one, was I going to be able to talk in front of a group of 100 people, I would have said, you're nuts. I have anxiety disorder. It's not going to work. And guess what? Even I would have been wrong. So people deserve a chance, to try out and do the things that they think they might want to, because they may succeed, they may not, but they're going to regret not having had the chance if they don't get to at least try. So
we have about 19 minutes left, but so I want to talk about the second part to supported employment that is really what made me buy into the supported employment program. So we talked a lot about the upfront, getting people their jobs, stuff. That's all pre-employment, but there's this beautiful tool called post-employment. So most of you, if you've gone through the process of the unemployment process through WorkSource, all that kind of stuff, the minute you get a job, they drop you. I mean, it's like, yay, you got a job, bye, see ya, we don't need to deal with you anymore. The beauty of supported employment and the IPS model is we don't drop them. We continue with them. Now granted, we're probably not meeting with them as much if things are going well, but we are there. We're a safety net, and that's really what helped the SUD program buy into it too, because with SUD, we move them through levels of care. We don't just go, oh, you're done with IOP, bye, or oh, you haven't used for 90 days, bye. We know that they need that support as they move through their life and the changes that they're making in their lives. So that post-employment has been so nice, because when people have lost their jobs, we move them right back. We start it over again. They're not lost. They don't have to reapply. They don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops. IPS is a very low barrier to get the services and the help that they need.
Mm-hmm. It is, absolutely. I actually have a brief story about a gentleman that was on the caseload of one of the people that I supervised, who had weekly groups that he attended, and that's what he attributed his sobriety to, was being able to go to group. When he got the job, he lost his Medicaid, or was going to lose his Medicaid, which means he no longer had a way to pay to go to those groups. So what happened was a couple of us teamed together and we helped him to get approved for healthcare for workers with disabilities, or the Medicaid buy-in program. So he paid a really small premium each month to get it, still continue with his Medicaid coupon, and he got to continue to go to groups. The last that I knew, he had been a certified peer counselor in the same job for, it's probably going on 3 years now, and maintaining his sobriety. But he really, in his case, he needed to get to continue to go to the groups. So as a team, we kind of brainstormed, how can we help him do that? Came up with HWD, Healthcare for Workers with Disabilities, and the Medicaid buy-in program. And then he was able to continue doing that. So there's benefit to that team. And I will say there's some benefit planning information when I talked about resources on the Pathways to Employment website, as well as 4 2-hour trainings for staff that they can access on demand. So lots of good resources. I do see that Christy says it is very much a reality, and I think this goes back to marijuana and marijuana jobs. She says, so the way I have approached it is finding jobs that do not do UA for marijuana. I had to research outside the box to detour them from the dispensary jobs.
Yeah, but you brought up a good point about losing their medical. We have had that happen a few times where they've lost their medical in post-employment. But the other thing too is when I'm in a county where they can get that job and make good money, it's hard to deter them away from it when there's not really other stuff available. So
sure. Individualized, very much individualized.
So, but that's great. To be honest, as an SUD provider, I think it's great that you were able to deter them from it and move them into another direction. Because I do believe it's a risky situation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and like I said, I hope that what you guys heard from all of this is, yes, I understand that there is a mindset that needs to change, and you have to always keep working with yourself to change that mind. We've been doing it for 2.5 years now, and I still have to check myself and be like, oh no, we got to do this. But it can happen, and I've been seeing clients succeed. And it's not based on what I believe is their success. It's what the clients are coming in and telling us that they believe is their success. Like I said, we've had clients who love the program. They're not working, but they love the program. They loved what they gained out of it. We have a lot of clients who really, we wound up putting them into college. That's kind of where it left off. So when you look at case, I do want to talk about the Fidelity part of the caseload, and Don knows that I struggle with this. Let me just put on my hat as a program director right now and how I have to manage that program financially. So typically you should have about 20 clients on your caseload per clinician, but the problem is when you get half of that caseload into post-employment and you're not having as much contact, I move to 4-to-1. So 4 clients in post-employment equals 1 client in pre-employment. So I do tend to have my clinicians have a little bit higher of a caseload. But to be completely honest with the reimbursement rates that we have, if I didn't do that, it would not be a viable program. So when I have to put on my hat as a director of the program, I have to make that decision of, am I going to take this hit on the Fidelity tool? And I do. I wish I didn't have to, but I do. So we really try to make sure that we meet everything else on the Fidelity as much as we possibly can based on our community. So, but I wanted to bring that to your attention because don't be afraid to have those conversations with DBHR. I think a lot of times when we see a Fidelity tool and that we're being reviewed against the Fidelity tool, we get nervous and we think, oh God, they're gonna pull money, they're not gonna like our program if we're not at this or we're not that. This program really is designed to meet the needs of each of our individual counties. Look, Grays Harbor County is very different. It's a harbor county while it's a rural county, but it's also a harbor county, so they're very different than what we are here in Lewis County. Thurston County, very different. So make sure you are working with DBHR around any questions that you have with the Fidelity tool, because I will tell you that their biggest thing is they want to support us in having a quality supportive employment program around the state.
Absolutely true. And I would mention, for those folks that aren't familiar with IPS and with Fidelity, it's about continuous quality improvement. Every agency starts where they're at. I haven't done that many Fidelity reviews. I've done, I want to say 10 of them. I've yet to see an agency at exemplary fidelity.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have to make the hard decisions. In order to implement IPS at its highest level, you want to try and get 5s on each of those items. It doesn't typically happen. I've seen a lot of agencies reach good fidelity, but like yours, sometimes they have to make the hard decisions about things that they can and can't do, and it's very individualized. I always hope that agencies will follow all of the IPS principles, but provide training assistance, ideas, suggestions. If something is scored really low in regards to here's some considerations in order to improve your performance on this particular measure and therefore the program. And then you as the agency decide how you're going to implement that, or if you are. One of the interesting things about Fidelity, and particularly in the state of Washington, there's no punitive measures if you've gotten a poor review. What there is a lot of support for how can we help you improve. I do know that there are, in fact, Darren and I just talked to folks from Maryland the other day, and in their state, they tie reimbursement rates to fidelity, and the higher the fidelity rate, the higher fidelity score, the higher the rate of reimbursement. That is not something that happens in Washington, is not. So if anybody reads that, hears that, whatever, in regards to their research related to IPS, we do not do that. It is very much a learning collaborative and continuous quality improvement, and how can we help you improve, but there's no punitive side. So just to let you know.
Yeah, and I think that is one thing that in my professional career, I've met many people who do like SUD services, and now over the last couple of years, supported services throughout the country. And I will say that's one thing that's really nice about Washington is while we strive to always have very quality services, the services themselves, we have a thing in healthcare is we want to be patient-centered. So what I like about DBHR when we're providing these services is that they're community-centered. So they understand that we have to make some decisions based on our communities and how we provide services. Because again, like I said, King County is very different than Lewis County. Eastern Washington has very different needs than we do. They have way more migrant workers than what we have over here, and so they have to meet the needs of that community over there. So I think that that's one thing, working in Washington State and talking with others throughout the nation, Washington State has done very well at, is making sure that we are community centered and we are treating our community based on our needs.
Yeah, well put. I would agree with that.
So we're kind of wrapping up. I hope that I gave you guys some ideas. Implementing it into an SUD is not hard. I did it. I'm not the greatest person, but I was able to do it, and I have been proud of what we've done. Do we have room for improvement? Absolutely. We always will have room for improvement, but I'm very proud of the things that we've done. Oh, here's one other little thing that you will find that happens with the supported employment. If you are the supervisor of that program, you better be a darn good supervisor, because here's the thing. Those guys know every job that's out there. They know every wage that's out there. So I have lost a couple. I would like to think that my current staff stay here because they enjoy being here. But yeah, and again, we are in the healthcare. We are a nonprofit. We don't have the greatest wages. We're in a rural community. So make sure that you're making this job fun and you take care of your employees. Let them express their frustrations. Don't as a supervisor, don't get mad at them because they're having frustrations. Helping people get jobs is not easy. It's not an easy task. But yeah, just keep that in mind as a supervisor. They know every job that's out there, and they know every wage that's available to them.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Just saying.
You know, and I probably get to be the poster child for supported employment. How about that? Because in truth, in regards to working with people in IPS with serious mental illness, and then prior to that, I worked with people, you know, kind of in the DDA system. I think I've got 30 years of supported employment.
Nice.
That's not bragging. That's when I say I'm the poster child. If it's something you love, it's something you love. And we hope to do the same thing with the people that we serve, help them get into something that they love. I am certain that everybody on this call is in part in their job because they enjoy seeing people improve their quality of life. And this is one of the really great ways of doing that. And so it's not always about a wage. You mentioned wage, Mindy, and that you guys pay what you can pay, but, you know, and want it, obviously, it sounds like from what I'm hearing you say, want it to be more. But the fact of the matter is it's not all about money, and we all know that. And a lot of it is about that satisfaction of helping people to improve their quality of life. And this is an amazing way to do that. So anyway.
Right, and the thing is, if we have happy employees who are doing this program, I mean, Dawn, you're right. People are doing it because they love it. And my job as a supervisor is to make sure that they still enjoy their job, because that's only going to translate to the clients. So sometimes the clients come in and go, oh, I want this high paying job. I want to make 6 figures. I wanted this. And, you know, as we age, which we don't need to talk about that, but we also realize that the higher wages aren't as satisfying at times for jobs. And so if we as supervisors can make it so that our staff are happy in this job and they have buy-in, they have a way to feel like they have a purpose, because that's what we're trying to help our clients do, that's only going to be in the end better for our clients.
Absolutely. It shows, doesn't it?
Yes.
It looks like we're right up against the time.
Okay.
And just wanted to mention real quickly that I'll send out Mindy's PowerPoint to folks. I will send out the resource links that I mentioned before. Thank you so much for attending. Truly appreciate you being here. And for those of you that want to hear more about FCS, July 16th, Taylor Danielson from Research and Data Analysis is going to share with us how well FCS programs are doing. And in fact, they're doing well. Yay! So
nice.
please feel free to sign up for that one. Mindy, thank you. And thank you especially for you know, hopping in and just going when I had technical difficulties first thing this morning. You know, that's one of our lessons learned in COVID is how to be more creative with technology. And so I appreciate you just, you know, going for it. That's pretty impressive in my mind. So thank you so much.
And also, just so everybody on the phone, Dawn, make sure that they all have my email address too. So if anybody has questions,
I will.
And I'll send you the PowerPoint.
Okay. Thank you. I will make sure they have your email address. All right.
Okay.
Thanks,
bye, everybody.
Have a good day.